Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by Shehara Wooten. Shehara is the author of In the Meantime, Own Your Financial Narrative, and the founder of Your Story Financial Academy. In this episode, we'll be discussing Shehara's insights on how we change the way we think about money and our financial story. Shehara, welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much, Tony. I'm so happy to be here today.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Let's get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story?
Yes. So let's start when I used to live in Philadelphia. I actually started, I'm an engineer by training. So I went to The Ohio State University, graduated from there with an electrical and computer engineering degree. And after being a part of a corporate sales and engineering training program, I moved to Philadelphia and started in a role there. And while I was there, there was an event. 25 years old, there's this event hosted by the Urban League Young Professionals. And it was a financial empowerment event. And I had never been to any type of financial empowerment that I could recall. I had never met a financial advisor at this point. So I was really excited to get to this event because there was going to be insurance people. There was going to be like mortgage and financial advisors and things like that. So I didn't know much about what a financial advisor could do, but I figured they could help me with one thing, and I'll tell you what that is. So I walk up because I'm not sure what to say to this financial advisor with a national bank. I walk up to him and I say, "Hey, my name is Shehara. I'm 25 years old and I want to retire by 30. What can you do?" And so in my mind at that time, being 25, that was 30 was ancient to me, and it's nowhere near ancient, right? But at that time it just seemed like it was ancient. 5 years I knew was short, so I knew this was pretty aggressive, but I wanted to see what he could do. How could you help me? Is that what you guys do, help with retirement? So and I didn't really enjoy what I was doing, so I ended up meeting with him, Center City, Philly. I walked away. At that time, you walked away with paperwork, like literal paperwork, right? So I had a folder, and I remember like a month or two, there was some time that passed and I hadn't heard from him. And I also wasn't sure that I opened anything up. And and I tried to call him, but I never received any phone calls back. I didn't even know how to reach him. So I came to the conclusion that nothing was done. And at this point, I started to read up on financial, like how to get out of debt, how to, and I had student loan, like a little bit of student loan debt, maybe like literally like $3,000. So I didn't have a lot of student loan debt, but I wanted to make sure that I was putting myself in the best position. And my church at the time was offering financial classes, get your credit right, all these things that I honestly didn't really know about. As an engineer, being an intern and starting internships like after my freshman year in college, I did sign up for the 401k. And so I knew that, okay, I'm going to save for retirement, save for my future. And I was okay with that. Being, 18, 19 years old, I was like, yeah, I want to save for my future. But I didn't know about credit. I didn't know about debt. I just knew I never wanted to be in debt. I hated debt. So I was trying to get my hands on anything I could to learn about just the day-to-day management of money. And with that, I just really started to enjoy that topic. And with some prayer, obviously reading, and then I read Purpose Driven Life. I read What Color is Your Parachute to help me figure out what do I want to be when I grow up. And because again, I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing. So I was very much in that exploration stage. And then finally, after a few years of just kind of doing that research and digging, I transitioned and changed careers. So once I changed careers, I said, I'd rather help people do this. So I'm at that place right now where I can help 25-year-old Shehara, engineer, just starting out, I can help her answer that question. Can I retire in 5 years or can I retire in 20 years? What do I need to do to make this a realistic thing? Or even digging into like, why is that so important? And maybe it's just more so just giving yourself options and understanding that. And that's what the journey has been like for me. And that's where that was really the catalyst for why I decided to leave engineering and change careers and become a financial advisor.
Well, that's awesome. That's quite the story. And, you said something there towards the end that I think is important. It's important to give yourself options. I want to walk back to your meeting with that financial advisor, and something you said about that meeting is that you weren't sure what was done at that meeting, if I understood correctly. Is that how you felt after the meeting with the financial advisor?
I didn't feel that way. I thought everything was done. I
Oh,
did.
okay.
So when I walked away with that folder, I thought we had taken care of everything. But then when I started, a few moments had passed. I don't know if it was like a month later or 2 months later or something. I'm like, hello, are we moving forward? I think it was more so looking at, is there anything being pulled out of my bank account, like to deposit into this? And I believe it was going to be maybe a Roth IRA that he was going to open. But that's when I started to question, when I started to see that there was nothing being withdrawn out of my account. So something's going on, something's wrong. And I could not reach him to determine what had occurred or what didn't occur. And, so that was pretty annoying. And then that's when I decided I need to learn this myself and figure this out. Because obviously for me, I felt like I'm not going to get that kind of help that I need.
Well, I think that's so important for people watching and listening, because so many people have had that feelings, after walking away from a meeting with the financial advisors, thinking you're doing one thing, or an insurance agent, and something
Hmm.
else entirely is happening, and it being
Yes.
ghosted,
Yes. And
by
that's
them.
literally
It's
what happened. And honestly, what I think happened, because I'm not even sure that that person's in the industry anymore. I think he might have got let go by that bank. But what I heard is he went to another firm. So maybe he wasn't opening enough accounts. Obviously, the account that I would have been opening was going to be small, but I don't know what that was about, but it was just like there was definitely a disconnect. And maybe he didn't even know how to open an account. I think he was kind of new. So when I looked back, I was like, when I got over to the other side, I thought back to, well, what happened there? And so those were some of the conclusions that I was coming to, is maybe he didn't know how to do it. Is he even still in the industry? That type of thing. He was just starting out, and to me it's kind of simple, but yeah. And sometimes I wish I would have kept that paperwork, but I do remember like looking through those folders and I'm like, okay, I know I did something, but maybe I wasn't supposed to come home with the paperwork. At that time, I don't believe it was a copy he gave me. I think he might have just given me the actual application, which is so strange, right? Like it's the strangest thing. So so that was the catalyst for me to say, let's do some digging and figure out like how does this work? And then I enjoyed it and decided to, this is the thing I want to do.
Well, that's awesome. And I think, what you've said there is so important for people is, you decided to take control of the relationship and of taking care of this and educating yourself so this wouldn't happen
Mm,
again.
yeah.
Because that happens to people, as they just don't even know what to do. But it's asking the right questions, and you took that upon yourself. I mean, it's become your career,
Yes.
uh, but you did decide to take control. And I think people, oftentimes with the financial services industry, they're very passive and they
Right.
don't, well, just take care of it,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't happen. Unfortunately, you ran into somebody who doesn't help you, but
Yeah.
you're a CFP. We can talk about a CFP later, but for everybody listening, it's certified financial planner, gold standard for financial planning.
Mm-hmm.
That's what certified financial planners do. They're professionals and take care of people.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so
Yes.
yeah. So I want to make sure we talk about your story. Is so
Yes.
one of the things you talk about is owning your own financial narrative. Why should people own their financial narrative? Which dovetails nicely to what you were just talking about.
Absolutely. It's important. I believe that no one's going to really know your situation more than you know it. They're not going to really understand your wants. They can't want it more than you. Obviously, we're here to help as professionals and guide you and come alongside you. And we're going to know a little bit more. We can kind of anticipate things that could potentially happen, but there's got to be that buy-in from both sides. If you're working with someone like a guide or a financial expert, you also want to be involved to collaborate, to really share your why, to share the really understand the things you want, the possibilities that are out there, and what your motivator is for getting things done. So I do believe that owning your financial narrative is so important to getting things done, to implementing, and to really living the kind of life you really, really want. And then having that guide, that expert to help you along the way is what's going to hold you accountable and really give you a little bit more fuel and education so that you are doing it right. So there's nothing like, people who are like, I know what I want and I'm going to go for it. And I'm just going to seek out the resources to help me do that. And it's exciting. And so, like I said, once again, no one knows or wants it more than you. Or you don't want them to want it more than you is what I would say. You really want to, dig in deep to know, how do I own it for myself, and how do I show that I want it? I want this for myself.
Yeah, that's so powerful, because you're the only one who owns your own story. And it's
Yeah.
really interesting. I was just reading a newsletter. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar writes an awesome newsletter.
Oh,
I don't know if you've
nice.
heard of it, but a shout
I
out to
haven't.
everybody
I'm
watching and
check it
listening. You can
out.
find Kareem on Substack,
Okay.
but he was just talking about that, how you're the only person who really knows your own journey.
Hmm.
And he was talking about that. You can have family and friends, but you're the person who knows yourself. And so that is so cool. And it's just funny that I was happening to be reading that right
Yeah,
before.
that's so cool. I have to check it out. That sounds like a really good. I'm sure he has so much wisdom, so many nuggets from his experiences.
Yeah, it's amazing. He's won, I think, like a couple, prizes for journalism. I don't think Pulitzer prizes, but I think like,
Wow,
internet journalism or
I love
something.
it.
Yeah, he's quite the writer for people who just think of him as a basketball star. And for other people, he was very involved with social advocacy, going back to the '60s with Muhammad Ali and Bill Russell. And
Yes,
so check out Kareem Abdul-Jabbar if you want some really thought-provoking content.
I
So
love it.
now,
I love it.
now we
Thanks
were
for
planning to
that.
talk about.
Yes, I love
I
that.
love it. Well, I'm a hoops head because I was also thinking of Dr. J when you were talking about Philadelphia. So, you
Oh
know.
yeah, right. Yeah.
So
Yes.
I'll relate basketball to everything we talk
Right,
about. So
right. And I'm obviously in my mind thinking about the land of cheesesteaks and tasty cakes. So I'm always thinking about the food.
yeah, I'm good with cheesecake steaks too.
Right, right, right.
They are good food.
That's right.
So,
They're a good
so
compliment to the sports.
oh, 100%, 100%. So, the next thing I want to ask you about is, can people find success by creating their own definition of financial freedom?
Yes. So I, going back to what we talked about already, it's got to have that internal definition. You've got to dig into your why to get deeper into how you define your own definition of financial freedom. So what I tell people, and I work with Black women in STEM, so I have them go through a process to ask themselves the question why 5 times. So I say, ask why the first time. And it's probably going to be more surface level, and it's going to be a more surface level answer, but then ask it again. And so, why? Because I don't want to work at this job. Why is that? Because I, don't want to have to clock in every day. Now, why is that? Because I want freedom. I want to travel. And then you'll get deeper. And I want to be able to provide for my relatives and give them things. I want to take somebody on a trip. I want to be able to create my own schedule. And you just keep asking why. And why is that so important? Well, because I don't want to have to rely on income, and trading time for money. And why is that? So you dig into your why and get really deep into what those answers are, and be honest with yourself. And you may have to do it a couple times, but what I like to do is what I call smarty possibilities. So I took the SMART acronym for when you're creating your SMART goals, and I've taken that and added your why to it. So you want to
Like
be
that.
specific. Yeah. So you want to be specific. You want to be measurable. You want to make sure you have a dollar amount to it. You want to have that, making sure it's attainable. So it's something that you could win at, and be realistic, time bound, put a date to it. And then what is your why? So once you start digging into your 5 whys, then now you can get a better feel and be more motivated to attain that financial freedom that you're looking for. And so that has really helped people and challenge people to really dig into it, because that first answer is more surface. But then if you really, really dig and you start to ask yourself these questions, that one question, 5 times, you really will get to the bottom of what it is, what you really want. And it might be emotional for you, to get to that. I some people will say, "Oh, I saw my mom working so hard, and I want to be able to retire her. I want to be able to, make sure that my kids don't have to work as hard as I do." And so there's different reasons that people will have. And ultimately, what I've found is when I talk to many of the women in STEM that I've talked to and reached out to, they've always told me they want options. That's at the end of the day. And that's what my heart was crying out for, was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this job. I know that I'm not really into it, but I want to have options. And so being able to do that and think of your life as just this continuum, and maybe retirement isn't the definition. Maybe that's not maybe you don't use retirement, but work optional. Actually, I'll even shout out a book that I read recently called The Art of the Sabbatical.
Hmm.
And it's an excellent read by Katie North. So I got to shout her book out, because it gave me a different thought about financial freedom, and not really looking at retirement the way we're all looking at it. We're 65, 70, that's when I stop working, and then I live my best life. Well, I feel like the book challenges people to think, if I'm going to be living much longer than even my ancestors lived before, then why not take some sabbaticals? What would that look like? Being able to save for having that freedom to try and even pivot or try something new in your life. Not thinking of your work life as, I'm just going to work this 40 years, do this career, and then I'm going to be done. Maybe you can have several careers, several things that you get into and you try out. and not being pigeonholed. But I think that's a part of a definition of financial freedom, really creating that. So so that's something that that I do believe people need to challenge themselves with. Like, what is financial freedom? Is it just I don't want to work anymore? Probably not. We all do get a satisfaction from work, and that's okay. But and then for some of you it is. But really dig into the why. Why is that so important for you?
Yeah, I love that, asking why and
Hmm.
adding it to the SMART goals. I talk about people adding priority, and that's goes to the same thing. It's like, yeah, is this really a goal that you want?
Yes,
And I love how you're asking people questions, but asking a simple question, why, allows people to talk and forces you as an advisor to listen. And that's the most
absolutely.
valuable gift you have as an advisor, is the ability to listen.
I
So,
agree. Because when you listen, you really start to get to the heart of the matter, what is really going on. And I have changed over, like I don't use goals as much. I call them possibilities. So really looking at life, what are the possibilities? What are the things so that you're not limiting yourself? And because sometimes people don't even know what their goal is. But ultimately, the goal is, give myself some options. I want to give myself some options. So let me explore all the possibilities that are out there. And what I find is some folks that I've talked to, they're so into the day to day and survival that exploring the possibilities has been a challenge. So I've noticed that too, because they're just like, I just want to move. Like, I just want to move to, I want to move from Chicago to Detroit or something like that. So then that's where we can, potentially set up more of a goal. Like, okay, well, how much is that? But digging into the why is it so important for you to move? Oh, because family's nearby. I can be around. I can just have a better, better life, a better work-life balance, things like that. So it's really interesting when you kind of transition it from just a goal, but to the possibilities, because now you're taking off limits and you're looking beyond what you have. But that's where I say, yeah, read some books to expand your your imagination, because sometimes you're kind of stuck in the day to day and what I'm trying to do just to survive and pay the bills. But try to read some books, listen to some podcasts, do different things to get yourself out of that rut of just
mhm.
like, I'm not, I have no creativity towards the possibilities because I'm just trying to make sure I'm making ends meet, and I have met quite a few women that tell me that, and so that's what we're trying to get beyond.
Well, definitely. And it's hard to find the time, but you have to learn new things if you
Yes,
want your life to change. So that's wonderful
absolutely.
advice. So, I want to switch gears just for a minute to make sure we talk about this, because this is one of the things that I connected with you over is how has the Black community's ability to achieve wealth been excluded?
Yeah, great question. I actually spent some time writing a book about that, right? So, in the meantime, own your financial narrative. And that is where I started to do some research. And I didn't do there's so many reasons, but I start the book talking about the Black Wall Street. So these are some examples of why there's been some challenges with Black wealth. So Black wealth actually is predicted to go to zero by 2053 unless we do something about it. And when I start the book out, and when I heard that fact, it made me think, why would that be? Like, wealth, the definition of wealth is assets minus liabilities. So when you're saying, or when this statistic is coming out that Black wealth will go to zero by 2053, that means assets minus liabilities will equal zero. which is astounding, and so that means that, as a whole, the whole population, there's going to be some folks that are negative, probably, right? That's what they're predicting. Some folks are negative. Now, there's going to be folks that are positive, but when we combine everybody together, that's where they're saying it's going to be zero. So that really bothered me. And I couldn't, yeah. So I had to, I spent some time writing a book about some of the thoughts I had towards that and some of the learnings I had from a historical perspective. So I looked at a place like Black Wall Street, which is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood. And when my book came out in 2021, that was the 100-year anniversary of this, the Tulsa Race Massacre. And when you think about the fact that this particular community, it was started by people who had been enslaved and or their ancestors recently had been enslaved. 1921, that's, not too far after, 1865. So, we just celebrated Juneteenth, right? And so many people, pretty much no one got reparations, right? No one got reparations who had been enslaved. And somehow they were able to take nothing and turn it into what we see as Black Wall Street, which had stores, theaters, there were doctors, teachers, lawyers, because everything was so segregated that they had to create their own community. And on that day in 1921, it was at the end of May to June 1st, the whole town was completely decimated, and there were about at least 300 people who were murdered. So, and everything was burnt down. Unfortunately, there's still not been anyone held responsible for that. And even as of the last few weeks, the two survivors that are left that we know about, they're in their hundreds now, 106, somewhere like that. They were told by Tulsa's Supreme Court or Oklahoma Supreme Court that they wouldn't even listen to their argument. So there's been no reparations, no repairing of any of this. So when you, and unfortunately, Black Wall Street, the story we know about, we hear about a lot, it's one of many cities across the country that was destroyed, that these cities were destroyed because of evil, right? And so there's never been any reparations for that. When you look at some of the cities too, there's been these communities. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and there's this Columbus Black History Facebook group, and they're showing these pictures of parades and different things happening back even like in the around that time, the 1920s, 30s, 40s, these thriving communities. But unfortunately, when we started getting our highway system, when it came time for the US to decide, okay, where are we going to put these highways? Oh, you know what? Let's just split up this Black community. And they've not turned around. You've got places in Miami, pretty much any city where you've got your highways, you can look and see, was there ever a thriving Black community here? And a highway came through and divided it. I presently live in Dayton, Ohio now, and there's some documentaries about how redlining started, and Dayton is pivotal to that. So when you think about redlining, which is where there was specific areas that were decided upon, these are areas that Black people can live, and these are the areas white people can live in. And Dayton is a really interesting study. I don't have all the facts right now, but there's some really neat on PBS. There's some neat documentaries about how Dayton has such a divide. You can have a house in certain parts of Dayton. I believe it's like West Dayton. They're very similar, was taken care of very well. And it's being appraised for, maybe 60, 70,000. Whereas someone who's in the other part of town and more of the white part of town, their home is being appraised, very similar home being appraised maybe 4 or 5 times as much. So all of those factors affect the wealth gap, and when you go to these communities, and you can see like, okay, I can buy a house in this neighborhood, but my net worth won't be as high because they decided not to appraise it as high. There's people who have been very stealthy and said, you know what, I'm gonna actually have a white person be my realtor, be my representative, so that when the appraiser comes into the house, that's all they see, and now the house gets appraised for a higher value. So there's a lot of factors. When I think one of the things that I shared on LinkedIn that might have caught your eye, and I share it often, was how the wage gap between Black women. So women as a whole, there's a wage gap. And then when you break it down culturally and ethnically, then you start to get an even deeper wage gap. So, in terms of, and I'm just going to look at the number, the average woman as a whole misses out on $406,000 in some change over a 40-year career due to the wage gap. Whereas a Black woman, her career losses are $946,000. And a Latina woman, her career losses amount to almost over $1.1 million. And then it's worse for Native American. I mean, there's this wage gap as well as a wealth gap. So you combine all of these factors, and now you can see what's going on. And when I talk with Black women in STEM professionals make more than anyone. I wouldn't say anyone, but it's a very, very lucrative type of career to be a part of. But even within STEM, there's those divides. So a male STEM worker will typically make more than a female STEM worker. And that's regardless of if they have an advanced degree. And when I was looking at some of the stats in the STEM workforce, a bachelor's degree or higher, Asian workers make $100,000. They had the highest median average, followed by white workers make $80,000, and then Black is $72,000, and then $70,000 for Hispanic. So even within these communities, there's even the hierarchy. So there's so many factors involved in this. And so I just felt like, even when I wrote my book, I do believe, there are some movements and discussions about reparations, but I said, you know what, in the meantime, we must own our financial narrative. So what do we do now, like with the situation we're in right now? And so that's where I started to look at, let's build by building our net worth. Let's live. I have a framework: build, live, save, give. And so build our net worth, live by understanding your cash flow, save by working on your savings and your retirement and all those things that you want to do, as well as protecting. So within save, I put in protection too. So, making sure you have the risk management, like insurances and different things like that. But then also giving, there's a pattern. And I'll say I've learned that as a whole, Black people are philanthropic. So it's kind of ingrained in us. If you are a part of church, you might, to give tithe and offering. So those things, and you do that. And it's just a part of the culture for the most part. We're not a monolith, but for the most part. So that's why I broke it out, and I do believe giving, no matter what level of wealth you are, is still a great practice. There's a lot of studies that you experience more happiness and things like that, just with the thought of being able to give to someone, just the thought of giving to people. The brain experiences more, or is shown to be more happy. So even with all those challenges, there's still, that balance that I like to give people. You want to build, live, save, and give. So that was a long answer, but that is just kind of giving that background to what I believe, is some of the culprit to why there's that wealth gap. And it's still being felt, even today. But again, and I'll just show the book cover just to show.
There you
But
go.
yeah, but I say, in the meantime, own your financial narrative. So until that day, until economic justice is served, what are we going to do? How are you going to take, just take what you have and be a good steward of what you have? And so that's where the premises of all my thinking and motivation.
That's awesome. And, one thing is, for those who aren't familiar with the Tulsa Race Massacre, it was a horrific event that you should go out and read about. And Chair, I don't know if you have any books that you can recommend that I can put in the show notes. Otherwise, I'll put something in there in the show notes for people. But I think these things that you're talking about, it's easy to not think about or overlook, but it's a steady drip, drip, drip. For people who've been watching and listening to the show, you may remember my conversation with Romy Pickron, who's working to help Black women pay off college debts, because Black women have a disproportionate share of college debts and carry more college debt than any other demographic. So while some of these things may seem small on their own, you add more college debt to lower house values, to lower lifetime earnings, and you compound all that, and it's a huge burden that is not fair. And yeah, I don't have an answer for it. But the more we can understand that this is a real issue, it's not a political debate. These are numbers. We're talking about numbers here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Numbers don't know politics.
I do have some books I'll give you, but I just don't have them on top of mine. I'm looking at one.
Oh no, that's okay.
Yeah, but I have a couple that I can provide. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so I'll make sure those are in the show notes for people who are watching and listening, so you can learn more about this, because I think, we can learn from history, and we're not doomed to repeat history. Hopefully.
Exactly. I agree. I think it's important to have that knowledge of it, because you can find yourself going down the same path and it already happened before. But if you know that these are the things that have happened in the past, this is why it happened, and you can identify it, now you can make that change. So that's why it's so important to understand our history and understand what's going on, because it's like, there's really nothing new under the sun, right? So, when you can start to identify the patterns that got us to that place, where people felt that it was okay to come into a community and just shoot it up and throw what are those called? The cocktail, the bombs or what have you.
Molotov cocktails.
Yeah. Like, they just thought it was okay to do that to people. Where does that mindset come from? Right. So it's important to understand the history and understand like where their minds are at, so that now you can counteract that. And also protect yourself and protect, what you're doing and your family and that type of thing. So, yeah, unfortunately, no one has been made whole from that, unfortunately. And those types of things is what set the whole community back. And there are some folks that have been able to come out, and there's things that people are doing, but it's a lot more that needs to be done, because otherwise, we wouldn't have this statistic that's saying Black wealth is supposed to go to zero. So my whole thing is Black wealth will go to zero by 2353 unless we do something about it. And that's what I'm trying to do my part. Obviously, I know I'm not going to be the only one to do it, and it can't be the only one. And so there's, Black CFPs, there's activists like allies that are activists, actively, out there having these conversations and to make change and to do and to take action, right? So yeah.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. So,
Yes.
everybody watching and listening, thanks for supporting this podcast and the guests that I have on who are talking about these issues. And
Yes,
hopefully, this will help you have conversations with your community.
absolutely.
Together we can make change.
We
So,
can. I
yeah.
agree.
So, want to make sure we get to the get ready question. So let's switch gears again. I mean,
Yes.
we could talk about this for hours. In fact,
Yes.
so the first get ready question is, what basic money concept do you wish people knew?
Yes. So one of the foundations that I start with, so I have a wealth gap closers program that I specifically, it's invite only for Black women in STEM. But when we start talking about money concepts, after we dig into mindset, because mindset is a big part of things, but I'm big on cash flow planning. So I don't subscribe to budgeting in the traditional sense. I love cash flow planning. People hate budgeting, and people, when you look at the statistics, the CFP board, they have produced various studies, and really at the end of the day, it's showing that majority of people are not budgeting. So I said, well, let me figure this out, come alongside people of where they're at and see how we can make this work. And so I adopted a tool. It wasn't developed by me, but I did adopt the tool. And what it does is it really helps people to dig into and split up. It helps them to split up their what we call committed expenses versus their spendable. And then our goal is to have money found and put that to work. So once we kind of automate some things and really, okay, we're going to take care of your mortgage, those are committed expenses, your rent, your utilities, really those expenses that have what we call non-emotional risk. They're not changing
Mm.
because you have an event to go to. They're not changing because you walk down the wrong aisle in the grocery store. It is just this is the electric bill changed because it was summer or versus winter, right? So you're going to pay your electric bill, you're going to pay your gas bill. Those are committed expenses. So we have money categorized and compartmentalized that way. And then from there, based on your income, based on all your committed expenses, I'm able to give you a recommendation for how much you should be able to spend. And so that's how I incorporate cash flow planning. So once people get that recommendation of how much to spend, I tell them what it is on a weekly basis. So this is what, if you spend this on a weekly basis, stay within these parameters, and you're spending the money on your on your dining out, on your groceries, on gifts, because that week you had some parties to attend, some birthdays. And those are the things, clothing, things like that. And so once people understand that, they have some parameters. And I'm not asking you to tell me, okay, how much did you spend on the latte? We're not doing forensic accounting. You're just staying within the weekly stipend, or if we want to call it a stipend or allowance, that I'm recommending to you based on the data you provided me. So what we call that is a behavior-based cash flow planning. And I believe that's a basic money concept that more people should know about. And it makes life easier because people are so busy. They're being pulled so many directions. And I do tell people, because if you're the Excel spreadsheet person and you're good at that and you love that, continue to do it. But I'm talking to people who are just they're not having success with it. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where my money's going. I know I make a lot of money, but I don't even know where it's going. What's happening to it? Like, why am I not saving it? And it's because we don't have the behaviors figured out. And you need some parameters, you need some boundaries. And that's what it does. I give them the boundaries. I tell them this is how much you're going to, be able to spend every week. And I break it out weekly because the designer of that particular program that I use, they discovered that if we give it to you on a monthly basis, by the 18th day of the month, you run out of the funds just because of your behaviors, how they work, people, how we manage money and how we think about money. So that leaves you 12 days to try to figure it out. So now you're robbing Peter to pay Paul probably, or, using a credit card. Now you're going into debt. And so I think a lot of people, that's what's happening to them. And then they're paying the debt back. And then they're like, so they're just like, well, I'm figuring it out. But if you break it out, on a weekly basis, your dining out, your gifts, give yourself a certain amount of an allowance that you stay within. And then if there's any what we call money found, then now we're able to put that back towards some of your short-term goals. So that's where now I'm like short-term goals, less than 5 years, 3 to 6 months it could be. So less than a year. So like an emergency fund. You want to build up an emergency fund, 6-month emergency fund. That might take 5, 6 years to do, but depending on the amount that you need to save. But this is where you create another account and you can take some of that money found or money left over to start funding an account towards just an emergency, So just really getting organized with your money is what this behavior-based cash flow planning concept helps people to do. And then also helps them to take any extra funds and put it towards the things they enjoy. Like if they're saying, hey, I want to, take a trip once a year. Well, let's create an account for travel. I had a client tell me that they were feeling stressed out. They had more than enough money, but they had taxes to pay on their housing because their house was paid off. So they still had the taxes, but they always felt pressure when the tax bill was due. So we said, okay, I told her, let's automate, how much you got to pay. Let's create that account or something where you're putting money into it for that dollar amount. And now when it's time to pay that, that property tax bill, you have the funds and you're not stressed out. So that's part of that. It's a basic concept, but it is foundational to me towards building strong financial awareness and getting to that place of financial freedom.
That's awesome. So one thing I loved it, you're not doing forensic accounting.
Yeah,
That's great. And what's interesting is when you're talking about the details and keeping in mind the people that you work with are STEM professionals who are more likely to be more detail oriented than other professions. It's interesting
Yes.
that you're still finding that. But
Yes.
one quick question, are you open to sharing with the audience the name of the budgeting tool you use? I mean, not budgeting,
Right.
the cash flow planning tool?
Yeah, so it's called Winton, and it's only given
Okay.
through financial planners. So you have to work
Okay.
with a financial planner to get it.
Oh, okay, cool. So, one other question I want to ask you before we wrap up is what is one habit that people can change when it comes to their money?
Yeah, so I think and I think going back to what I talked about with the cash flow planning and the behavior-based cash flow planning, I believe that some people are just making it too complicated. So to make it simple, automate. Automate as much as you can. So, and this works very well for people who have a source of income that is more consistent. But,
Mhm.
Automate paying your bills, automate contributing to your accounts, whether it's saving for your retirement, saving for your, midterm goals. Like if you have something you want to do in the next 10 years or so, automatically put towards an account towards that, automatically save automatically pay your premiums for your insurance. I think these are super key. For me, I'll give you an example, just personal example. For years, I had life insurance, right? And I still have it, fortunately, but life got busy and the premium was due. And I was in the midst of something like moving and life was super busy. And then all of a sudden I was getting these grace period notices. And, I was just like, wow, I've had this about 10 years and I don't want this to lapse all of a sudden because I got busy with life. And so with that was a wake up call. I called them and I said, hey, I want to pay this now. Right. So pay this now, but I also want you to help me automate this. So how can I pay this on a quarterly or automatically pay it annually, whatever I need to do, because life what it does and it lifes, right? So life does what it does, and things get busy, and there's so many things that can happen, and you can have the best of intentions, but what would have happened if I would have lapsed on a policy that I had been paying for 10, 15 years, and now all of a sudden, because I forgot or because life got in the way, I didn't have it anymore. So I just tell you, do an audit of your financial situation and see what it is that you can automate and automatically pay, automatically save, and pay yourself. If you can automate, it's going to make your life so much easier, especially given that we're all super busy.
Yeah, that is wonderful advice. So, last question is, what is your number one tip on changing the way we think about money?
Yes, great question. I love that because I'm always into like money mindset, and I want people to understand that you don't always have to think, oh, I don't have any inheritance, right? I don't have an inheritance. I don't have windfall money coming to me. And what I want people to understand is that money is a tool. So really taking the time to see how can you use this as a tool to help you to live your life, help you to save, help you to build, and help you to give. So that is my number one tip to really figuring out how to change the way you think about money.
That's awesome. That's a great
Yeah.
tip. How you can use it to live your life, build, and to give. And I know you talked about giving earlier, and I think that's so important for people is, there is a joy that comes from giving, and you get to support people, and you can weave it into your financial life. So, Shehara, where can people learn more about you? Where can they pick up a copy of your book? And where can they find out about the Your Story Financial Academy?
Absolutely. So where I post a lot on LinkedIn, and that's how we met. And so that is where I'm sending everyone go there. If you are a Black woman STEM professional who is feeling frustrated, feeling stuck, feeling like you don't know what you don't know, and you want an action plan, let's talk. And I do have a link on my LinkedIn where you can schedule a strategy session. So I'll make sure to highlight that when I send you all my links. And then also with my book, it's sold at Amazon, it's sold on Barnes and Noble. I've even seen it at Walmart. There's bookstores that can buy it for you if you want to support a local bookstore. Tell them that you want the book, though most of them will be able to order it and then get it for you. So that's a way to do it. I also recorded a Audible, like an audio book, and it's my voice, so it's me reading the book. So feel free to buy the audio book as well. And then there's an e-version of it, so you can get a Kindle, you can get a copy of the ebook too. So those are various ways to get a hold of the book, and there's also a paperback and a hardcover book. So for those collectors, you guys can get your hardcover as well.
Well, that's awesome. And, as you mentioned about it, I forgot, one of the thing you can do is, to share the books with your community. I personally have a little free library, so you can buy a book in your little free library, or you can ask at your public library for your public library to stock
Yeah.
the book and make sure it's available to other members of your community. So
Yeah.
Shehara, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights on the Get Ready Money podcast. It's been a pleasure.
You. I appreciate it, Tony. I've enjoyed myself. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was an awesome conversation. As always, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today to change the way you think about money, please be sure to subscribe and to tell a friend. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.